Yeah, we're going to continue this conversation from part one because this is absolutely fantastic. So take it away, Natalie. You're about to spray all of the information, all the legislation to how we're going to make change.
Okay, yes, let's see. So we were talking about recap. I was going to say, you're talking about bariatric clinics and, patients, they see the health professionals like 3 times, Nate, right? And another thing that we shouldn't forget, when you're in the healthcare setting, how long, well, I'm talking US standpoint, when a patient goes see a doctor or a dietitian, usually they don't have enough time. We have they're like, okay, you got 15 minutes. That's it. You talk to them, in, out, next patient, right? So that's, of course, is going to overwhelm the patient, as Nate said. Like, the patient's going to go like, oh my God, I have so much information, such little time, didn't have time maybe to ask questions or, understand exactly what my problem is. So I'll go in the internet, get more stressed out, hear from other people, get more stressed out. And yeah, as Nate said, they'll go crazy, basically.
Yeah.
It's one of those deals too, that there's no way. And what I've learned from my certification as being a master dietitian nutrition coach is literally my first session, you got to peel the onion back. We got to figure out where are they in pain? I mean, I was people like, oh, well, you can just lose weight. It's it's not as simple as that. And this really very triggers me. Is oh, just reduce your calories. It's well, of course, if it was that simple, I would be out of a job. I would not have a job. Yeah. And, you wouldn't be able to have your autonomy in terms of doing coaching, because it's oh, cool, it's simple. Just eat less. It's well, that's really dumb advice from doctors. And I get triggered from doctors when they say that, because you just, well, if the client already knows that, it's well, no, duh. It's when a dietitian has to sit down in a bariatric setting and give them information, it's yeah, in 15 minutes, it takes me 60 minutes sometimes when I have my first session with the client. I got to onboard them. I have them ask me any specific questions, but then I'm digging down to the pain points. That takes a discovery call to get them to even consider to buy from me. So that can be a 25 to 30-minute conversation before you make the investment. And then I have to dig in your pain points and figure out, what is your cost of inaction? If you don't take action today, what is this causing you? Is it causing you your time with your family, your friends? Is it affecting your relationship? Is it affecting your relationship with your spouse? I can't tell you how many women I've worked with over the years that literally they hired me as a trainer because they felt that their relationship, their intimate relationship, just took a complete backseat because she gained 20, 30 pounds, he gained it, and it's just not what it used to be. And they feel very bad about themselves. No dietitian is going to be able to oh, well, we just got to tell this client to lose weight. You got to be able to peel the onion back and understand what the root cause is. And you can't do that in 15 minutes. I mean, if you can do it in if somebody can do that in 15 minutes, I would love for them to reach out to me, because I would love to have that conversation, because I would love to figure out how to do that. But it's just not feasible. And yet again, how are you going to address any skills and strategies and interventions in 15 minutes? I just don't see it being feasible, And
another thing, let's not forget this COVID-19 pandemic. I entered my clinical rotation just as the pandemic was beginning. And I was very excited, I'm oh, I'm going to see, patients. I'm going to be giving them all my medical nutrition therapy tips and advices. But, once the pandemic hit, suddenly, I was supposed to give a workshop on cardiovascular health and, how to take better care for people who are undergoing cardiovascular rehab. Yeah. So, and then during the pandemic, suddenly all those workshops were canceled. Outpatients were not allowed in the hospital. Okay, what's the solution? We can't call them over the phone. We still are trying to navigate everything. So there's already so much that the pandemic has affected all of us, and just in terms of canceling all those appointments. So those appointments with dietitians and doctors, and those workshops to understand how to take better care of your health. And those workshops were let me tell you, 45 minutes to an hour. And they've just lost that. And, I'm so when are they going to be rescheduled? Are we going to have an online session? They're no, once the pandemic is over, we'll, resume those again. But it's just right now, everyone's trying to tackle, we can't have in-person activities, in-person anything. Now what? I feel what Nate's doing, the online coaching, it's still valuable. people still need that. And that's where telehealth is right now emerging. So maybe with telehealth, we may see change, but I don't know. We will see. Right.
I think when we look at that, I think another thing that people don't really see is that when the cardiovascular classes got canceled and all that, you literally just told everybody, and this is actually how I'm looking at it, so please correct me if I'm wrong here, Natalie or Nate, you literally just told everybody, oh, cool, don't worry about it. Cardiovascular, no big deal. Nah, no big deal. We can deal with it when the pandemic over. You literally just told the entire population that needed help that your problem wasn't valuable enough. You were not worth our time. And that really, I'll be honest with you, just kind of pisses me off because it's like, are you kidding me? These people are in pain. Are in pain. They've got a chronic condition. And you're going to tell me because you can't figure out how to use a Zoom link that you're not going to send a Zoom link out to these group of people and you're not going to educate them like it's like, no, you're just being lazy. And again, it's coming down to policy. And there's probably some policy things that I don't understand. And now they can correct me, but it's like, it obviously wasn't that important to you, because if it was that important to you, you would have figured it out. I'm a firm believer if these people had a passion to help these people, and that why was so, I always tell my clients, if the why is strong enough, the how appears. If these people were so passionate about, we want to help you, they would have figured it out. I guarantee it. And again, Natalie can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're an outsider looking in, that's essentially what you just told everybody. Oh, don't worry about your health. You can worry about your health later after the pandemic is over. And I hate to break it to everybody, but there was a study, I don't know if it's a study or news article, I can't remember off the top of my head. People gained an average of 2 pounds per month, if plus, during the pandemic. So you're telling me that people gained 24 pounds, if not more, over the pandemic, and we're over a year. So we got these people 20, 30 pounds overweight, and we're not going to come up with an intervention to help them. Like, that just seems really, really, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's looking out for the public's best interest. And the sad thing about that is when the medical field and these policies, that's why I love that Natalie is going into this, because we need a dietitian like her to go in there and be like, listen, we got to fix this, because I can't help everybody. I wish I could. I wish I could just not sleep and work with, I wish I could have clients from 5 in the morning until 24/7. But I can't help enough people because I need some sleep, and I actually need to actually be able to take care of myself to lead the clients. But it's like, they're going to go to people that have no qualifications. They're going to go for people that aren't like you, that, yeah, you might not have your RD credential, but you have the knowledge and the know-how. They're going to go on Instagram. And it's funny because Natalie, I think, is going to, she thinks, everyone thinks she, like, I had this crusade to be like, go on Instagram and be like, I just want to silence all the keto zealots, and the fit tea just drives me bonkers. But they're going to go to those people because we have failed to help them. And that's one of the reasons why I got into nutrition coaching, and I sought out a mentor who was my business coach to help me with that, because I was like, I need to help people, but I don't know how. And now I've been fortunate enough that I was like, okay, cool. Well, I can only help so many people, but what if I then decided to join the army, I'll call it, of dietitian nutrition coaches, and I'll just mentor RDs and do this on the side, and I'll affect this dietitian. Now this dietitian goes with 40 people and it just multiplies and folds. We just need more people out there, and we need more people like Natalie and like myself that are going to go out there and go both ways, because we got to go wide. Natalie needs to go to policy. We need to go to the internet, because that's where people are going. I want to say, I think spending was up like 60% on just online last year, and it's not slowing down. So people are going online, and we need to meet them there, because if we don't, I hate to say it to you, some influencer on the internet is going to get a hold of them, and then it's going to ruin them. I actually have a client who reached out with an influencer, and I spent so many time trying to repair. And that's why I got so passionate about, like, I've got to go here, because if I don't, who is? Yeah. And it's going to be an Instagram influencer that doesn't know what they're talking about, that didn't invest in education like you didn't invest in education like Natalie and I, and then they're just going to be ruined forever. And they're going to be into this vicious cycle of, well, I'm just going to go from one fad diet to the next because nobody taught me a system and a structure to lose weight or reach their fitness or weight loss goals. It doesn't matter. And teach that sustainability.
Right. And like back at the whole, like, with the whole workshops being canceled, when we look back at it, we nobody knew how long COVID would be lasting for. So when I was in my internship, when they canceled it, they were under the impression, oh yeah, like in 1-2 months we will be back. But I haven't been in contact since. I'd be curious to see what happens. But I mean, just in general, like I think this pandemic, what has taught us, I think we all need to be prepared for whatever happens, even though we cannot conduct in-person workshops or health sessions or anything. For example, us as professionals, as health professionals, we need to be prepared to be with our clients in the online space, because that's really what's trending now. And as you said, like almost all the influencers are those people online, like you see on YouTube, those ads. I'm not gonna name, maybe I shouldn't, but you see those ads like, I'm gonna help you lose 10 pounds in 1 week. We should be in those ads, like us. But as I said, hopefully this pandemic has taught us something, and hopefully we'll be more prepared next time, right?
Yeah. I think it's one of those areas where for some people that come into the industry may feel like it's a losing battle, but they're normally the people that aren't in it for the long term, or the ones that really, really want to help people. But there's like these people like yourselves who are in it for the that's why when I asked you the question before about why is that curious and why is that important to you, because it often, if you can answer that in a way in where you've had deep connections to it, you can last a long time in this industry. You can last forever in this industry for the right reasons, and you're doing it for the right reasons too. It's only when you have an ulterior motive. Oh my god, ulterior motive. Those people then appear in the ads, or they appear with those claims, and they're the people that need to, I don't know how it's changed or if it ever does, to be more firm with what you can say and how you can advertise and what you can negotiate in that short space of time, the shop window as you call it on Instagram. It'd be great to be in the situation where people aren't exposed to that, or there was a bullshit meter alongside it, very similar to how as much as I don't agree with him, when in shops, some of them in the foods, there's the green, amber and red type of things that show you, okay, this is good or this is bad, whilst they may be way off. If there was ever a point where Instagram could turn into that, when you could just have a red flag on these people selling fit teas, that would be amazing.
Oh gosh, I've reported a few already, maybe.
I don't have enough time in the day to go. I mean, I've DM'd some of them before and be like, hey, can you tell me what, and people are like, why would you do this? I really do not care if that person hates me, because that person is prying on this person, and they're like, oh, you know what? You've tried everything and you're in pain. I'm going to get you to lose 10 pounds. And it's like, they sell them this really shitty product. It's like, it's essentially a cleanse. It's tea, and it's like this overpriced tea. And it's like, and then people bark at me and then I've heard people, oh, I don't understand why you charge $500 per month on the internet. It's like, so you're telling me that like over the course of a year, you spend $6,000 if I did my math correctly, but you only work with me for a year or 6 to 9 months or however long you want to. And then I just send you on your way, and I've given you a system, but you're willing to go on the internet and buy hundreds of dollars of supplements, go to Optiva, go to Weight Watch. You're willing to spend all this nonsensical on this cash on this nonsensical stuff that doesn't work. But then we as dietitian, nutrition coaches are like, I'm going to give you a system. No, I'm good. It's like, and that's what just irritates me. And these people are smart. Like you cannot discount the fact that the influencers on the internet, they are smart. They know exactly what their client wants. And unfortunately, they use these really, really shady tactics to go after these clients. And predominantly, from what my experience, it's females, because let's be honest, be real here. The societal pressure on females to look a certain way is it's unobtainable. Like, I don't understand. Like, there's no way a female can look like that 24. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way. And so I just feel so bad and that's why I chose the female demographic of 25 to 35, because at that point I feel like they've tried everything. They've been taken advantage of enough that I'm like, listen, I can come and be the voice of reason and say, hey, I got a system and a skill set that you can use for the rest of your life, and I just need to sell you on that brighter future. And that's what drives me. And I'll be honest with you, when I see the ads on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and it's like, it just drives me, because it's like, okay, obviously I'm not doing enough. Obviously I need to impact more people. I need to get more dietitians to do this. I got to, get more people to come into the system, because until we can get dietitians out there in the space, this is never going to change. Or people like you that are willing, you may not have the dietitian credential, but your system's solid. I was saying, we got to band together. What drives me bonkers is when you look at dietitians is we get all up on our high horse. Oh, well, there's this health coach out here that's marketing. It's like, well, quit worrying about this health coach out there, because congratulations, that health coach is making more money than you, and that health coach is delivering results. Why can't it be you, right? Don't spend your time worrying about what a health coach is doing. Just go do it yourself and do it better, or start working with health coaches and be like, what can we do? Why can't we band together? Because I feel like health coaches, for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Nathan, I think they really do have good intentions. I don't know a lot of health coaches that do a lot of shady tactics. So why don't we just band together? Why can't we just work together and be like, hey, let's go come together for the greater good, and let's fight the influencers that are trying to take those people's money and not really do anything with it.
No, 100%. So see, I also don't think either. I don't know if there's a high percentage of this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't even know, even at that point, that some of the influencers don't even know that it's wrong either. And like some of it is based out of good intentions, because they may have done it, not understood that it was not that specific thing that was giving them the results, and then they're only trying to portray that within their client, within their following too. And it's like, it's that whole fallacy of everyone works from good intentions, or everyone works from a place of thinking that it may benefit others, but it's also that accountability and maybe the legislatory side of things, where it's like, well, no, this is actual factual information. And that's also really, really difficult to decipher as well, what is fact and what is fake, or what is written and what is not. Because even nowadays, as it's probably moving on into a different subject, but as research now comes so heavily prized, with funding from different areas, then even research now it used to be, you used to look at a paper and never really have to consider who was funding it, or even where it was coming from. Or at least I didn't, maybe 10 years ago. I just looked at papers and thought, okay, well, I'm just going to take it for what it is, and what the stats say, what the graph says, what the normative data is. I never had to utilize my nonce to say, okay, who is this person that's the author of this? What is their credentials, and who do they affiliate to, and what type of zealot are they? And and now it's a case of that is now most people's work. These people that are coming out with like research literature reviews, they're spending more time looking at the individuals that are making it and where the sources of funds are coming from, and the fudging of those, as opposed to actually the goods of the data. And that's a shame. It's a really big shame, like, because that means that something that used to be a gold standard within the industry of science, because it's effectively science, a gold standard of science is now being taken into question a lot more than it should have been ever. And that's a real shame. And that's just another deciphering. It's just created a new layer of what is right and what is wrong, even to a layer of now, okay, well, even though that research says it's right and it's wrong, because people generally listen to research, and if someone brings up a paper, then you can say that's credentials, or it's like it's authority. Now, in my opinion, that research or the paper doesn't really stand at any authority at all until it's actually put through the test of who, when, why, what, with what intentions. And then you can start looking at the data saying, now I can trust it, unfortunately. And that's, a lot of people say to me, even like, because I work with busy professionals, or working with busy professionals who can read data and can read research, so that when they see that, they'll send me a link and say, look at this data, it proves that, and I'm like, okay, but I say, for example, there's studies on probiotics by Yakult. Conveniently, they do make a probiotic that is on the shelves in the supermarket. Or like, conveniently, there is research on I don't know, fucking vegan protein vegan protein stuff, or the effectiveness of protein from vegan sources. And then it just so happens that the research is really, really great on it for some studies, and then not on some others, or whatnot. And then these are also then sponsored by vegan supplement companies, or the other places that they come from. So it's a really, now it becomes a lot more smoke and mirrors, which is, I imagine that's something that you have to consider that when you're looking at how do you affect larger scale change, but what research are you presenting to these individuals that then creates change?
Yeah, no, Nathan, this is like really, really good points you brought on there. This one was like, yes, exactly. Because, there's so much research out there, like, hey, we can even do our own research, but you have to look at the really good, credible, quality research. And actually, just this morning, I was talking to my professor in my class about this, and how we talked about, like, there was this research article that came out many years ago, many years ago, and how it claimed that, spinach has such a great source of iron. It's like one of the best iron sources out there. But, recently scientists went back, as you said, there's like those scientists are going back and like, checking if this is actually right or wrong. And they saw that there was a mistake in the calculation that claimed that, that said like, oh my gosh, spinach is like high iron. Now, like, they did the calculation again, like, oh, the calculation was wrong. We need to refigure this again. So yeah, it's so important, that we look at all these like credible resources out there. Very, very important.
Is
Yeah,
that
I
also
think
the element of, sorry, Nate, it's the element of sound bites. Like we use this in when we talk about biomechanics a lot. Like you speak about like a sound bite, like everyone should bring their bar down to the chest of a bench press. And that's a sound bite because it's not individual, like someone's rib cage, limb length may be completely different. So therefore their active range of motion may be completely different. So you're not going to be able to take the bar down to everyone's chest that's going to be efficient for them. And it's a soundbite taken from wherever, whoever, however, but now it's become something that is the standard. And that also then typifies that spinach thing, is because what the first thing, if someone said to me, how do I get ironed in, I'd be like, spinach. But it's not necessarily true. It's just a generalization of a soundbite which has been taken and evidently has now been taken out of context when you redo the research. So, you often think, and I always think this all the time, I'm like, what do I know is true? Truly. And then I'm always like, well, actually, I don't think anything's true. And then I start getting trust issues, and that's half my problem. It always relates back to my lady problems as well. But it always comes back to those exact same things. But it's like, what can I actually believe is true right now? And I just don't know.
Right. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
it's so funny that you say that, and I'm gonna agree with you on the whole lady problems thing. But it is what it is. And Nally's over here laughing. But like when I tell people about research, and I think it's kind of like when you look at we look at nutrition research, and there's so many things that we take into equation. I think people get so hung up on, like you said, sound bites. For it's even in the personal training world, they're like, well, you should always squat to depth. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like, I'm not a fan of absolutes. Like, other than like the law of thermodynamics, and there's one other thing I don't know why I'm forgetting, like these absolute terms are just so asinine. It's like, you should always do X. I always tell somebody, I always think if somebody is talking in absolutes, they have no clue what they're talking about. Like I was talking to this with a trainer, they're like, well, you should always, squat, ask the grass on squats. You should always do this. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like, no, because like we got to look at the hip structure. We got to look at like all this, and like, well, everybody should be shoulder width in your squat. It's like, well, are you taking into account like how long their femur is and where in relationship to the hip, and are they flat footed? It's like, you got to stop with these nonsensical statements, because you're just driving clients down this rabbit hole. And then the other thing I hate is you got the selection bias of, oh, well, I'm going to go find those papers, because you can find papers to prove anything you want. Like I could find something that says eggs are bad, but I eat 4 eggs a day and I haven't died yet. And I'm not saying that, you should eat 4 eggs a day, but I'm just saying, it's like, I think we need to look at research, and from a nutritional standpoint is understanding that like, it's more than just that. Like people are like, oh, well, you see here, like, fasting causes these adaptations and all this. It's like, well, yeah, cool beans, but what's the practical application of, like, if your client can't intermittent fast, I don't really care if it makes them have wings. It doesn't matter. Like I always tell people, it doesn't matter till it matters. And you're getting so focused. And I think clients do this too. They're getting so focused on these minor details, like does spinach have more iron, or how many eggs should I eat? Or it's like, well, okay, how about we go broad? Let's go broad a little bit here, and let's just get some good foundational structures of basic nutrition. And let's look again, like you said, who's doing the study? How was the study conducted? And nutrition is so hard because we're all different, right? We know that if we use this population, this potentially could happen. And then it's like when they tell people that like tracking your intake doesn't work, and it's like, well, okay, for starters, did the research study make sure that the client was actually reporting their intake? Did they do all these things? And some of them don't. They're like, oh, it's just their normal reporting. It's like, do you understand that from a research standpoint, we know that if somebody tracks their intake without any education, they are 50%, they underestimate their calories by 50%. So the client's like, oh yeah, I ate 2,000 calories, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be 4,000. So it's like, we look at these studies, I think we need to stop getting so hyper focused on one thing, sound bites, and be like, okay, let's read the study, let's look at who did the study, and then let's figure out, okay, how can I apply this to my client? Does it have any practical application? Because you and I, we all know that there's these studies that they just do these research studies because someone gave them some grant money, and that's like, hey, what happens if you do this plus this? It's like, what are people doing in this space and what is working? It's like when I look at training clients and I look at like heavy lifting, like you can look at all the research studies in the world, but go look at the guy that's squatting 1,000 pounds and what is he doing? Maybe you should start figuring out, okay, work backwards why that guy's squatting 1,000 pounds, or why is this guy so jacked and doesn't have shoulder problems? Or why is this person fit, for whatever we want to use that? Why are they maintaining their weight? Not just saying, well, diets don't work because it's got a 5% success rate. It's like, well, just because the research says that, why don't you ask the sophisticated question of why is the 5% getting it right and why is the 95% getting it wrong? And what is the 5% doing? And if they're doing unsustainable methods, how can we reverse engineer the methods the 5% is doing into the general population, other than just using this defeated argument? Oh, well, diets don't work, so guess what? I'm not going to mention diets because they obviously don't work. It's like, well, I think there's a lot of, it's like success leads clues, right? What are the successful people doing? And can we reverse engineer that to have success in the general population? And if we can do that, I feel like as coaches and clinicians and whatever, we win and our clients win, because we can look at it from a very sophisticated perspective of, here's a very hard concept and here's the real world information. Can we take it from the clouds and go to the streets? If we can't do that, then what are we doing?
Yeah, 100%. I think the element is always, context is always key in anything of these areas. But it's also, I think terminology is a massive thing. So not like, I had to learn how to not speak in absolutes. And it wasn't because I didn't want to speak in absolutes because I didn't know what that was. Is that I was just so passionate about this specific thing. And I guess you go around in those scenarios, especially during your learning education as a coach, you go through that scenario of that is your truth, right? So that your truth is bring your barbell down to the chest because that's all you know. And then, you know, slowly you start to learn a little bit more about mechanics and you start learning a bit more about what actually works as opposed to what you thought worked. And that whole journey means that you probably, you know, you do go from a transitionary period of speaking in absolutes. But I think a lot of people do end up, a lot of coaches, clinicians, whoever, end up staying in that scenario because they don't know, or they don't get to that tipping point of, oh, wait, context and everything about that person matters, as opposed to, or like you said, taking it from the sky to the streets, which I really, really like, is taking it from there to there. They don't understand that then it goes broad. They just go, this is my truth right now. I'm going to spread that as much as I can. And whilst that's, again, it's back to that thing we said about before, is that that's good intentions. It's actually not great practice. And that there's a massive difference. And it's like, you know, we all got in this industry to help people for most part. Like no one's coming into the fitness industry thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire, because, well, if you are, you're deluded. For the most part, anyway, there's very, very few people that are making those type of millions over and over again. And if you are, then fantastic to you. But I think we all got into it to help. So therefore, when we know our truths, we want to share those truths. And then when we do share those truths, that's the difference between it being good practice and just you being a helpful person, because I think that's the difference between an amateur and a professional when it comes to coaching, and it comes to, I just call it coaching in general. So whatever qualifications you have, is that the amateurs will speak in definitive terms, they will speak in absolutes, they will speak in yes or no's, but then they fail to understand when you move into a professional setting, like the way you say things, the emotions that you have behind it, the outcomes that you're trying to leave for your clients end up being the most important things. So you have to mold the way you do things, the way you say things, and the way you act to get a desired result that the client never knows is going to change. Like the client is never going to know you spoke to them in a certain way to get a certain result, because they only see the face-to-faceness of that specific interaction. And that, like, one of my biggest things is, like, for most people in the industry, as I coach coaches now on a large scale, is that you have to turn into a professional to really help people in the way that they should be helped or need to be helped, as opposed to you just being a bit of a hero. And I don't know if you guys know the drama triangle, which is like it's in therapy. I'm massive on my therapy stuff. Is that in the therapeutic relationship between a coach, a client, and a therapist, they have something called the drama triangle, which you need to stay out of, which is effectively like a hero is over here, a victim over here, and a persecutor over here. And what that ends up happening is, if you're not a great coach, you end up sitting in either one of these three scenarios. Normally, the client sits in the victim, and you switch between like persecutor and hero. And generally, because we want to help people, we overshare, we give hero mentality, we come and save the day with all the knowledge that we have. And that actually doesn't end up in a good coaching relationship. It just ends up in the client becoming the victim or the persecutor in all of these facets. So you end up going around in these cycles of not understanding how to help people, but you're just trying to help people. And that, I think that whole entirety of that triangle is a large thing for coaches to understand, especially when you're speaking in absolute truths and you're understanding that nature. I'm waffling now, but once you get out of that, once you get into that professional mindset of staying outside the drama triangle, and the way that you elaborate information, the way that you talk, the way that you expand, the way that you vocalize your if and or situations, or choice related basis, or context driven behaviors, then you become a coach, then you become a professional, and then that then actually ends up helping with good quality outcomes. So I think, as you mentioned here, context is absolutely key, and the way that you speak to people is a skill to really master as any type of coach and dietitian in any field, really.
Yeah. And I like what you said there. And I think one of the things, like, if you kind of sum the drama triangle up, that's kind of what we call it, but it just let the client be the hero of their own story, right? Again, not oversharing that information. Like I always tell, like, I never tell and people look at me weird. They're like, well, you never tell your clients. No, I never tell my clients to do anything. I just ask the questions to get them to the outcome that they desire. Like if they come to me like, you know what, I want to work on my fruit and vegetable intake. Awesome. Okay. What can I do to help you? What do you need? And like, well, I need help with this. Okay, cool. So then I'm only going to give you the information that you need, but I'm going to ask the questions and have you come to the answer. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to ask you sophisticated questions along the way for you to come to the outcome. Like one of my favorite questions is, I was like, let's reverse this. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I had a client that was being non-compliant, and I was just like, hey, there's nothing, I've tried everything, but I said, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in my shoes? And she's like, oh, I get it. You tell me to track my intake. You would tell me to weigh myself once a week. You would tell me, you're wanting me to do these things. And I was like, yes. I never told them to do that. I just had to ask the questions to get them to figure out what they needed to do. And she's became one of my most successful clients. But I could tell her, track your intake, weigh yourself, blah, blah, blah. But I'm commanding them. Did I really do anything? No, I didn't do anything. Obviously that doesn't work. Getting the client to come to the answer themselves is so powerful. That's why I think I'm a firm believer that coaching is an art and it's a skill, and it's developed over time of making a million mistakes and learning from it.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a good way to end it as well. I think it's covered, I don't know how many topics and everything around it, but that was a fantastic podcast for the 3 ages, really, to listen to about different topics that we've all covered there. So I really, really appreciate having you on. And obviously, like, I think we all share very, very similar values in all of these areas. So it would be amazing to just continue to shoot the shit on a couple more, even outside of a podcast, because I think it's fantastic. So thank you very much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening as well.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you letting us come on.